Welcome to another episode of NFL Draft Preview presented by Verizon. Ethan Greenberg, Dane Brugler. Dane, this is an exciting time of the year. It's not your time of year because it's not draft season right now. It's being put on pause. This is full-fledged free agent season right now. Obviously, a lot of smoke right now with the Jets and a certain quarterback that no one really knows what's going on. And by the time this podcast airs, maybe something will have happened. But as the time that we're recording, the Jets right now seem to be in talks with Aaron Rodgers. No one really knows, but that's the status. So, and we'll see what happens in terms of a trade compensation, whether it's draft, whether it's players in return, if it in fact happens, right? So there's like a lot of things that were like, if that happens, maybe. But all that to say, right now with the Jets, what's your take on what could happen before we talk about the draft?
I mean, we're talking a little bit before we hit record about how there just seems like there's too much smoke in the room. You know, you can barely breathe with all the smoke. So it seems like that's the direction we're headed, which is going to be a lot of fun. We've seen some reactions already from Garrett Wilson, and I think just aside from obviously what's going to happen on the field, just the vibe that it brings, I think will be overwhelmingly positive to that locker room, to the fan base. And so, I mean, I'm just like you. I'm waiting, hitting refresh on Twitter, waiting for the news to come across, see what happens so we can, kind of move on and start preparing for it.
So this is what we know, okay? And we're going to use free agency as a tool to talk about the Jets draft. We know that the Jets have gone out to California, right, reportedly so, to talk to Aaron Rodgers. That's all we know in regard to AR-12. Then it was reported today by ESPN's Adam Schefter that Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb could be options for the Jets, and then most recently Mercedes Lewis, the tight end. So right now, if you were to look at the Jets offense, right, as it stands, and using the reports that are out there to talk about what could happen in April in Kansas City for the Jets, you would imagine that free agency, or you'd imagine wide receiver, not really on the board, at least early for the Jets, if they would have potentially Lazard, Cobb, maybe Corey Davis. He's under contract as we record this. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. That's a pretty loaded wide receiver group. Then you look at the tight ends. You're talking about C.J. Uzomah, Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Ruckert, potentially Mercedes Lewis. You're probably not looking at a tight end there. The offensive line, specifically tackle, we talked about, but one position that we have not talked about yet is center. Connor McGovern has been a staple for the Jets the last 3 seasons, started all 17 games for the Jets. He was one of 2 offensive linemen to do so. The other one was Laken Tomlinson. So let's say the Jets want to add a center in the draft. What is the earliest option for the Jets that you think makes sense based on the talent that's available?
I think there are 2 guys that you could look at in the second round and say, okay, these are guys we can plug in and they're going to help our offense pretty quickly. The more pro-ready of the 2 is John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, 6'3.5", 300 pounds. He's a 6-year senior, super senior, so he's played a lot of football. And he's a true center. I mean, he lines up in the pivot and he's got the frame for it, the mass. He's really good with angles. He's very skillful with the way he uses his hands, positions his body. And he's just been a guy that's been rock steady, very, very consistent. Not the best athlete, out there, but, he can move. He's got the strength. He's got the finishing attitude. So I think that can the consistency get a little bit better? Yeah, and that's why we're talking about him as probably more of a second rounder than a first rounder. But he's a functional pro starter. But he's my number 2 center in this class. My number 1 center in this class is Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin. A little bit taller than your usual center. He's 6'6", 313 pounds. He was a tackle in high school. And then when he goes to Wisconsin, they like to cross train. So he's working out as a guard. He's working out as a tackle. But in order to get the best 5 on the field, they move him to center because he has that athleticism. He has that the movement skills that you're looking for. And he's so good at getting out in space, very fluid, very rangy for that size. And he's very smart. I mean, he's a guy that understands what the defense is doing, and he reaches the point before the defender. And he has the play strength to hold up. So now he's probably a little more unpolished than John Michael Schmitz. So maybe there's a little, he spends too much time on the ground. He needs to improve in some of those technical areas. but he's a guy that has the quickness, has the power, has the vision, and they're all, that's what you want at the center position. So as long as you, especially for a team running a lot of wide zone and get out in space, that's where Tippmann really thrives. And so he's a possibility there in the second round. Maybe not as polished as you're looking for, but I think he has position flex, and I think that he's a guy that, is going to be a long-time starter for your line.
Do you think both of those guys are, like, what are the chances both guys are available by the time the Jets select in the second round? Or is there a chance that one, if not both of those guys, are scooped up?
I think there's a good chance those are the only two centers drafted in the first 3 rounds, and because of
Wow.
that, it's not a bad center class. It's just an okay center class. There's some decent options on day 3. Talk about Luke Whippler from Ohio State, Ricky Stromberg, Arkansas, Alex Forsythe, Oregon. I mean, there's some quality center options once you get to day 3, and maybe even one or two of those guys sneaks into the top 100 just because the need is so great for some of these teams. But I think when you talk about those top 2 guys, because it's not a great center group in the top 100 picks, maybe one of those 2 centers goes a little bit earlier than maybe they should, even into the first round. So it's really hard to say at this point if one or both will be there when the Jets pick in the second round, because some of these teams have a need at center, and they don't want to wait until the second round to find out. So it will be interesting to see how long these guys will last.
I'm thinking about the second round and centers just in recent memory. Like, let's say the Jets don't re-sign Connor McGovern. There is a chance that he does re-sign because free agency is a fluid situation. Anything can happen at any time. I just felt my watch buzz, just making sure it wasn't something crazy. And I don't think it is as of now. And it is not. It is something about Michael Thomas and the Saints. Okay. But Diana Rossini of ESPN tweeted couple minutes ago that Aaron Rodgers has provided the New York Jets with a wish list of free agents he would like them to target and acquire per sources. It includes Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, Mercedes Lewis, who we've all mentioned so far on NFL Draft Preview presented by Verizon, and one more player who is an offensive weapon, Odell Beckham Jr. So that is, I guess, according to Diana Rossini, a part of the free agent wish list provided from Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets, who is not the Jets quarterback as of now. Again, this is all just hearsay. This is all smoke. We don't know what's going on, but that is what is being reported right now. And so back to the draft talk, back to the center talk. Connor McGovern might be a Jet next year. He might not be. But let's say the Jets, for all intents and purposes for this conversation, decide to draft a guy. I'm thinking about recent memory in 2021. The Kansas City Chiefs selected Creed Humphrey in the second round.
Yep.
And that was pick number 63. The pick before that was Josh Myers, who snapped the ball to Aaron Rodgers for the Green Bay Packers. Creed Humphrey's obviously a very good player in this league that was acquired in the second round of the draft. The first center selected in 2021, I think, was technically Landon Dickerson, but Landon Dickerson also had that position versatility where he played anywhere. He doesn't play center right now for the Philadelphia Eagles. He plays guard. So do you think that teams might overthink any of those 2 guys when Creed Humphrey, to me, who's not the draft expert you are, seemed like pretty much a plug-and-play guy? And he fell to the second round and obviously was a plug-and-play guy and a very good one.
I have yet to hear a good reason why Creed Humphrey fell as far as he did. I mean, the Chiefs just got – I mean, sometimes in the draft it takes luck, the right guy to fall to you, and that's what happened for the Chiefs that year. No idea why most NFL teams overthought a guy like that who had such great tape, tested well, had a good Senior Bowl. I mean, there are so many things pointing to him being a really strong NFL starter, and we're seeing that right now with the Chiefs. With these 2 guys, I think it'd be easy to when you got a guy like Joe Tippmann who is a little bit taller than your usual center, and that might be an issue for some teams. He spends way too much time on the ground, needs to improve his pad level. So some of those issues maybe it could be something that keeps a team from drafting a Joe Tippmann in the top 50. John Michael Schmitz, he's an older player. He's going to be 24 years old. He's this next week, I believe. So, he's a guy that has, been around a long time, and some teams will overthink that. So, to be a Creed Humphrey is a tough thing to put on either one of these 2 guys, because Creed Humphrey was such a really talented prospect. I don't think either of these two guys are quite on that level. But we're talking about two guys that can be NFL starters. And, when you're drafting day 2, that should be the goal. It shouldn't be to, hopefully we find a Pro Bowler. Let's just get good players. Let's get starters who are going to help us win and help us get to where we want to go. And that's the playoffs and the Super Bowl.
All right, so moving on here on I'm going to call this like the crossover edition between free agency and the draft, because free agency crystallizes the draft picture, right? Like, isn't that how that works from an evaluation perspective when looking at mock drafts and doing that exercise?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, because obviously teams, based on what they do in free agency, that alters what they do in the draft. And, you always draft talent over need, and especially early. But especially when we talk about second round, third round, it's that's where you try to plug some of those holes. And so, yeah, the free agency mock drafts before free agency and mock drafts after free agency understandably look a lot different.
All right, so it is March 14th. Spring training is going on in baseball right now. Mm-hmm. Can I throw a curve at you right here? You ready? You ready for this? Okay, so in Indianapolis, when we were at the Combine, we did 2 live shows. One of them, Rhett Lewis of NFL Network, came on the live show, and he was talking about a guy as he would view as a potential option at 13 in what is already a pretty loaded room for the Jets, I would say, in terms of players that they've invested in, whether that be draft capital-wise or financially. That's tight end. Rhett Lewis loves Dalton Kincaid, and he said so much so that he would consider drafting him with the 13th overall selection. If it were, in fact, a best player available approach for the Jets, would that shoe fit for the green and white?
I think if you're drafting Dalton Kincaid, if you're the Jets, I think you're probably drafting him as more of a wide receiver. I think looking at the roster, especially if they sign Alan Lazard, it's kind of crowded with guys that are going to be operating out of the slot. So I think it would be a little redundant in terms of role and what you want these guys to be. But Dalton Kincaid is the best pure pass catcher in this draft. Just talking about being able to go up, isolate the football, come down with it, better than any receiver in this draft, better than any other tight end in this draft. So if you're, he's not a true inline tight end. He's more of a weapon in the slot, a guy with burst, with body control, outstanding ball skills, drops on his tape. I mean, you need a magnifying glass. They're hard to find. So this is a guy, he's got a basketball background. You see it on the field, natural ball winner. He trusts his hands. He's a very good route runner and really good after the catch as well. That transition to, secure and go. So for me, Dalton Kincaid on this team, yeah, it's a little redundant, but there's only so many targets to go around, especially if they sign some of these guys that we've been talking about. But if you're looking to get better on offense with your skill players, I can understand how you would come to the conclusion that, hey, Dalton Kincaid does that for us. So, again, while I think it might be a little bit crowded with what they could be doing in free agency, Dalton Kincaid makes your offense better because he is, again, the best pure pass catcher in the draft.
And worthy of the 13th overall pick, regardless of who picks there?
Yeah, I mean, it would not be hard to talk yourself into that. I mean, I think on my board, he's in the 20s, and so, but again, because you can never have too many weapons. And so if you feel like Dalton Kincaid is going to move your offense, and I can certainly understand why you draft him as high as the top 15.
And is he your tight end 1?
No, so I've got all these the top 4 tight ends pretty closely together, and it's ice cream flavors. It depends on what you want. If you want a true inline guy, Michael Mayer's your guy, and so but if you want more of the 6th offensive lineman's got up, pass catching a potential. He's ascending. Darnell Washington. If you want the best combo, where he's a good athlete, but he can also block for you, Luke Musgrave from Oregon State. And then if you want the best pure pass catcher, that's Kincaid. So they're all ice cream flavors. They're all good. It just matters what you're looking for. So I think every team is going to be looking at these tight end rankings a little bit differently, based off of what they have on their roster already, how their offense operates, and the exact type of role they have in mind for their tight end.
I've definitely asked you this before, and I don't care. I'm going to ask it again. You brought it up, so it's your own fault. Ice cream. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Anything with Heath pieces in it. How about that for an answer?
What? That
Yeah,
is
Heath the
rogue.
candy
I
bar.
love it.
Oh, it's the best out there. So yeah, it's you're getting a Blizzard from Dairy Queen. It's always Heath. If you're going, even if you're having something at home, have some Heath pieces off to the side. So you just
Oh my
throw a little
God.
bit in there. You can't go wrong.
You like Cold Stone where they just mix it all in together for you? It's
Oh,
one big lump of whatever you get?
I mean, you can't go wrong, right? I mean, it's I think
I
that's
can't believe that.
Well,
I'm
is
not
it really?
knocking it.
I mean,
I'm not
what would you
knocking it.
say?
Wait, hold on. I just want to be clear here. I'm not knocking it.
Okay.
I just was not expecting I was not expecting to be talking about a Heath bar today. Like I had to Google it to make sure that I knew what it was, just to, make sure. And if
Wait,
you're
what?
listening and you're like, I was just making sure that I had every ingredient in a Heath bar in my head.
When's the last
I
time
don't
you
know
had
if-
a Heath bar?
I
If
don't
ever.
know in my lifetime if I've ever gone to the store and purchased a Heath bar or if a buddy of mine or whatever has given me a Heath bar and I've eaten it from start to finish. I don't know. I honestly think the answer is no. So I think I think I need to do it and get a review. Are you a big toffee guy?
I mean, yeah, Heath. Yes. I mean, I don't eat a ton of sweets, but again, I mean, when I have ice cream, that's
Yeah, it's the Heath bar.
That's yeah, I can't go wrong with that. Yeah, a little
I
bit of
feel
whipped
like
cream.
Schefter,
Yeah.
by the way. I feel like I'm like Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport or any of these insiders, like looking at my phone, making sure nothing happens. Garrett Bradbury just re-signed with the Vikings, I think, if
Okay.
I read that correctly in my 2 seconds. Anyway,
Speaking of the centers,
yeah, exactly right on cue. Thank you, Garrett. My go-to ice cream is honestly, it's probably one of two. It's either mint chocolate chip if it looks good, and if it's not, I'm probably going something that's cookie dough or Oreo based, like a cookies and cream. Like that for me, or chocolate chip cookie dough. I'm pretty simple.
no, yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah.
again, but that's why the analogy fits, right? Because these guys,
Yeah.
they're all good. That sounds amazing. It just depends on what you're looking for at that point in time.
And mint chocolate chip is a polarizing flavor, just for the record, because some people love it, some
Yeah.
people hate it. It's kind of like,
That's
I
it.
feel like it's like the cilantro of ice cream flavors. Is that
Mm.
crazy?
Well, it's in my house. Yeah, my wife loves mint chocolate chip. It's okay. It's fine. I'm not gonna turn it down, but definitely wouldn't be my first choice. So yeah, I
Okay.
can understand that.
But we can respect each other's choices and still make our selections with full confidence, kind of like the tight ends in 2023. All that to say, the Jets have a very loaded room, though. Like I said, Tyler Conklin, CJ Uzama both return. They were signed last year in free agency. Jeremy Ruckert, the third-round pick from last year, on the roster. Kenny Yeboah on the roster. Mercedes Lewis could be on the roster, depending on what happens in free agency. If you're just tuning in, it was reported that he is that the Jets could be interested in Mercedes Lewis. Now, let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. The one position we didn't really talk about was running back, and I want to get to that later because the Jets have a good room with Breece Hall returning, Michael Carter, and Zonovan Bam Knight. But the Jets could always look to add another horse in the stable, whether that be free agency or the draft. But defensively here, when you take a look at what's going on, you would imagine the Jets are pretty set in the back end of the defense when you're talking about Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed at corner, Michael Carter II as well. Then at safety, Jordan Whitehead under contract. The Jets reportedly agreed to terms to acquire Chuck Clark from the Ravens. That won't be official until the start of the new league year when that can be processed in March 15th. So that is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for the Jets, you're probably looking at reserve roles in corner and secondary and safety, So with that being said, let's creep down a level. Linebacker, C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams re-signed. Quan Alexander, a free agent. Jamien Sherwood could be in line for some more playing time. So again, that seems to be maybe second or third round and on. Defensive line is where it gets interesting, specifically defensive tackle, because Sheldon Rankins is an unrestricted free agent. He played a pretty big role for the Jets last year, and the Jets always like to add defensive linemen. So with that being said, whether it be 13, whether it be 43, the second-round pick, or the third round, who are guys that play inside at defensive tackle or have position versatility where they could go inside and outside, like John Franklin Myers, that could be an option for the New York Jets?
Yeah, and if we're talking first round, Do the Jets need to do extra homework on Jalen Carter just in case he were to fall? With his off the field question marks, I find it hard to believe he would fall out of the top 10. But maybe you do a little bit extra homework just in case that situation arises. Now, more realistically, I think when you look to day two, that's where I think you're going to find some of the value at defensive tackle. If you're looking for a true run stopper, a guy that can really plug the middle, Mozzie Smith from Michigan's your guy. A guy that is really good against doubles. He has some quickness, so he can win one-on-ones. But he's a guy that you're going to plug in the middle. It's an unsexy position, but he's going to really help your run game. If you're looking for more of a upside penetrator in the second round, then Gervon Dexter from Florida. This guy is huge, 6'6", 315 pounds, a basketball background, still learning kind of the biomechanics of how to use his body to win with leverage and use all these gifts that he has to be disruptive. But there's a lot of talent there with Gervon Dexter. So you're buying him low, and then you're looking at the upside in 2-3 years and saying, okay, this guy could end up being a playmaker for us. But if you're looking for someone more that's going to help right away, because Dexter's more of a long-term pick, I think you're looking at maybe a Zach Pickens from South Carolina. He's probably going to be in that third-round mix. Former five-star guy who has quickness, has power, can play multiple positions up front. I think that Keanu Benton from Wisconsin, he's also in that mix. A guy that was a nose for the Badgers, but has pass rush potential. We saw it at the Senior Bowl. One-on-ones, he was able to win those because of his quickness, because of his hands. So Keanu Benton in the third round could be an option. So this is a pretty decent defensive tackle class, depending on what you're looking for and where you want to spend, your draft capital in the position.
And you know that the Jets always want to add depth and at the D-line position, whether that's on the inside or the outside. And the way it is right now, when you take a look at who's unrestricted free agent, you're looking at Sheldon Rankins and Nathan Shepard. So let's just say those guys are gone for all intents and purposes. Then you're looking at a potential hole that the Jets need to fill. And the Jets' defensive ends right now are Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson, John Franklin Myers has that position versatility, Bryce Huff, an RFA who I believe is going to be tendered, if not already. So there's depth there, but the inside of it is definitely where the Jets need some help. So I would say the only other position that I would want to bring up is really linebacker. We haven't really talked about, but for the Jets, with re-signing Quincy Williams, I would imagine that would be a round 3 or a day 3 option for the Jets. The Jets like athletic linebackers who typically played safety at one point in their career. Is there anyone that comes to mind that fits that bill for you?
Definitely. A couple guys, once you get to early day 3, that might fit. DeMarvion Overshown from Texas, 6'3", 230 pounds. He was a safety out of high school. And then he made the move to linebacker. They played him all over. They played him as more of a Sam. They played him as more of a Will. They moved him around a little bit. And because he has athleticism, he's a 4.5 guy. Really, really quick. He's explosive. He's got range. He can mirror at the line of scrimmage with ease. That downfield speed, shows up as a blitzer as well. So Overshown would be in that mix in the 4th round. And then, if you really want a guy with speed, Owen Papo from Auburn, he brings it every time. This guy is he had like double-digit recruiting offers in 8th grade. He had the nickname the Freak in middle school. He's had been a kind of a tall tale growing up in Georgia for a long time. Goes to Auburn. I don't know that he necessarily lives up to being the 5-star that he was, but man, he's an athlete. At the combine, he ran a 4.39 at 6 foot 225 pounds. This guy can move, so he's got that freaky speed, strength. Again, I don't know that the instincts are necessarily on the same level. He'll take some false steps. He'll be out of position. You don't want him in the middle. You want him more on the outside where he can run and chase and use that speed. But man, he can flow downhill. He'll stroke guys over the middle. He has some change of direction, so you feel like he can cover and hold his own against tight ends and backs. And then plus he gives you something on special teams. Because of that speed, because of that toughness. So those two guys would make sense in the 4th round.
Last position that I kind of want to hit on today, because we talked about safety a little bit in the past, is return man. Because for the Jets are scheduled to release Braxton Berrios at the start of the new league year. And he's been the Jets' punt returner, kick returner for the past pretty much 3 seasons. So for the Jets, if they were to look to add somebody in the draft that's maybe returns, maybe he plays offense, defense, whatever, who are the top options as returners that the Jets could look to add?
Devin A-Chain from Texas A&M is going to be a really interesting player to see where he goes in the draft. I think based off of ability, he should go top 50. But, he's 188 pounds, and a lot of teams are not interested in a running back that's 188 pounds. But maybe when you get to the 3rd round, a guy like that who can be a weapon out of the backfield, he can be that change of pace option that you want, but then also help you out as a return man. That's like what he gives you. I mean, he has return experience. He had, I think, a 96-yard kick return in college. He had a 95-yard kick return in college. So that speed that he brings can really be a difference maker. And I think it's hard to figure out where his value is in terms of where exactly he's going to be drafted, because, again, I think he belongs top 50 or so. But at 188 pounds, that's just going to be a problem for a lot of teams. But if you're using him as a rotational back and as a return man, he's a guy that could be a real weapon for an offense and then for also on special teams.
What you just said is probably, if you were a Jet, for any running back, is what would happen, because the Jets have obviously a lot of very talented horses in the stable per se at running back, so he would be in the rotation, whether that be A-Chain or somebody else, and then also in the mix at returner as well. That's all we have on this episode of NFL Draft Preview presented by Verizon. Free agency, full swing here, and then next week we'll get back to full draft mode. Dane, thanks a lot. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Ethan.